everyone. This is Lynn Davenport, Mary Lowe, and Ginger Russell. We're here with another episode of Tick Ed. We are ticked about something going on in Texas education with UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, making its way into our curriculum through House Bill 1605 for open education resources. That's a term that was coined by UNESCO, and Ginger Russell is a precinct chair in Montgomery County, and she's joining us because she has been on a research dive on education for what, decades, Ginger? Introduce
Little
yourself.
over a decade. Yeah, since 2012.
Okay.
2012.
Tell us about the debacle that you uncovered with CSCOPE back when Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was running for what, a Senate seat?
He was running for the Senate seat.
Before he was Lieutenant Governor.
Before he was Lieutenant Governor. Yeah, my mother's a science author. Most of y'all know that. And Mom was tutoring some kids at Marlin Independent School District. And they had brought her some papers, no textbooks, papers. And Mom said, this is riddled with errors, science errors. And she wanted to see their other curriculum and asked for a textbook. They said, we don't have any. And then they asked for she asked for some more of the papers. And so they couldn't bring her any. The teachers would not give it to her. She went up all the way to the Education Service Center, ESC 11 out of Waco, and they would not turn it over to her. Matter of fact, she went there. She used to do science workshops at the ESC. And when they found out she was in the building looking for the CSCOPE director, which is Common Core, they left the building. So they didn't want to confront her.
Looked out the back.
She calls me because I've been politically active and said, Ginger, we got a problem in our education system. And then I started working with various people, one of them being an SBO member, and diving into the online curriculum behind a password. And this is our introduction into edtech in Texas. And I was able to get into the system. I was given a password and found just lots of material that was so anti-American. Students coming the stairs to communism, the Boston Tea Party being a terrorist act. Glenn Beck picked up the terrorist act story. It ended up going national. We ended up fighting it on the Senate level. And there was a lot of grandstanding with Dan Patrick chairing that committee. I had not been involved to that degree before, and I was sort of in awe of it all. But 10 years down the road or 12 years down the road, I see that nothing was done, and that philosophy and pedagogy has just increased and gotten worse with the ed tech in our schools today. Sadly.
Yeah, and that's true. And it's interesting what you said is, nothing was really done. And I see the exact same thing. There are all these dog whistles and these false flags that our government is protecting us and that our government is doing the right thing. So they're being held on a false pedestal of being for us and pro-America and pro-constitutional republic. And I think another example of that is SB 3, which Brian Hughes passed. That was supposed to be Creighton. Creighton got in an accident, and Dick Weekly ended up going to Brian Hughes to have Brian Hughes basically sell that bill on the floor. And that was, for those who don't know, that was the 87th session, and there was a lot of publicity and a lot of people logging in to watch. And someone that's involved in this, Steve Toth, actually had a CRT bill in the House that they debated on the floor for hours. Neither one of those bills had a consequence in it. So the bills passed, and we're told, okay, Texas can't have CRT in their education system anymore. It's illegal. It's not illegal. There's absolutely zero consequence in the bill. And this is consistent with what our legislators do. Is they write a bill, they say, we did it, we heard you, we did it. But there's no consequence.
I'm sorry, Mary, I didn't mean to interrupt. I would like to say that it's been eye-opening to me in this battle is that what I had discovered then and since have discovered is that the Republicans are a lot to blame for what's going on. At that particular time with CSCOPE, I was so shocked about how many Republicans were pushing the ed tech. And Alice Linehan, a friend of ours, who's another education warrior, met with Perry's staff, education staff during that time. I was so shocked at how liberal they were. And it was just a very disheartening meeting. It's like we're battling the people that should be on our side and protecting our students in the classroom.
And that still remains today. And so that's kind of that was the catalyst for an event that we held in Montgomery County with you last week. And it was very well attended because I know people trust you and they've followed what you've done over the years. You were and still are an expert in researching these harmful pedagogies. And so that's why you're able to fill a room to notify people about this bill that has brought in open education resources through the Texas Education Agency and through our legislature. And it was a $2.44 billion bill. So they spent more on this than they did the border. That's when you know there's an agenda here, and our governor and our lieutenant governor and our Republican senators and our Republican House members are all behind this, and they're backing this. These bills can't get through without the Republican support. So there's a lot of talk about Democrat chairs and the Democrats, but really this is all on us. This is coming in through us. And not just the education technology being harmful and being experimental, but also the content from Amplify, which was the vendor that was baked into this bill. And they'll deny that it was Amplify. Amplify is owned by Steve Jobs' widow, Laureen Powell Jobs. She bought the company through Emerson Collective. And so these are radical Democrats who are engaged in this at the top. So this is a bipartisan thing. You can't really point to one or the other, but in Texas, we're the bastion of conservatism, right? Or the last bastion, supposedly. But we have conservatives who are now mocking Ginger for sounding the alarms on this. And that was, I found that to be very offensive and hurtful, considering you and Representative Steve Toth have been friends. You've hosted him in his home. You've broken bread together, your fellow believers, and to have them mock you, have him mock you for being against this when you are well researched. You don't just say this. You're not an alarmist. You're not just saying this out of hyperbole and dramatics. No, you've actually done your research. So have we. And so what you did after we had this event on Thursday, and we were able to show people what was in Amplify and UNESCO and this open education resources bill, which OER was mentioned more than 50 times, and so is technology in this bill. So that's when we believe them. When they tell us and they show us, we believe them. So we believe them.
So one of the things that I want to say is, yes, they definitely attack Ginger, but we are used to them taking truth and then mocking us about truth. And one of the examples is that it's free, that this is free. So what happened here is, at the state level, many activists showed up and spoke against 1605, but it was a heavy deck stacked with paid lobbyists who will profit from the passage of 1605, testifying against us. And but yet we put truth out there, and many of them acknowledged the truth, but then went ahead and voted for it anyway. And just some of the things. So there's in the activist group of parents, you have those who have taken on the sexual education as kind of their lane, and they have been doing that for quite a while, and they're successful. They've educated a lot of us, and we appreciate their work. And then you have another group that have gone after pornography. And I'd say those are kind of a splinter group. Like, those two groups are really very related, but we have gone after the quality of what's being done in our education system and why we are not producing children who read and can do math and are competitive. I mean, our entire education system should be producing very educated, smart, intellectually competitive, not children that can regurgitate just what's on the STAR test, but very
Right.
high thinkers. And everything that that Ginger saw with CSCOPE and that we see with Amplify, and that we also see in this new open education resource, because as a result of the testimony, the TEA has had to shift in order to protect the Republican legislature. I mean, basically, Mike Morath went in there and told them one thing, we told them another, and they voted on it. And now the Republicans who voted this through, they're kind of being exposed a little bit because they believe the wrong person. But here are some of the things. You know, Amplify has critical race theory in it, which is supposedly illegal. It's chock full of social emotional learning and mental health. It violates natural age appropriateness. There's violence in there. It has a political agenda. It's anti-American ideology and values. I mean, these are the same things that you were seeing in CSCOPE. And that's before I get to the paganism and the multi-religion facet of it, where now the state is using that it has the Bible in it. This is good. We're putting the Bible in it. I mean, they are doing anything they can.
Can you address what's the issue? Because this is how they've been tickling the ears of the conservative activists like Joanne Fleming of Grassroots America and Cindy Castillo with Eagle Forum. So why is this a problem for religion and the Bible being inserted into OER? What's the problem with that?
Well, legally, it's just a lawsuit. I mean, it's immediately a lawsuit. When you have one religion being promoted over another religion, it's a lawsuit.
Well, and we don't care about lawsuits. What we care about is the fact that it opens the door to all of these.
Well, no, we do care about lawsuits because we're paying to defend them. I mean, it's why would we pay for this product and then pay to defend it when it's bad altogether? So we do care about that. I would disagree. We do care about that. But it's the main reason for me is that the Bible should never be taken out of context and applied into a specific educational statement or curriculum, like it is talking about Martin Luther King and comparing Martin Luther King to the story of Daniel. I mean, I don't believe that the King family would approve of that. But the other thing is that there's no way, that's not the intent of the Bible. And the Bible should be taught as a whole thing, not as individual snippets, which is what they're doing. So they're doing it just to sell the concept.
Yeah.
I'd
like to make a statement about when I was doing CSCOPE, they had taken a lesson from Christopher Columbus and some of his journal entries about praising the Lord for the beauty and the majesty and everything from God's creation. And he was well thought out. He was a Christian man. They took his journal entries and made him into a climate activist in the lesson. And so when you start like you said, you need to take the Bible as a whole and not just take excerpts out. And the way that things, sadly, today, our churches are filled with these social justice warriors who take scriptures out of context and push a certain political agenda. And so I have a lot of concern with what they've put the Bible scriptures in, what they're teaching from it, how have they changed it, the pedagogy they're using to teach it. And we know what that is. So this is a very concerning.
So, but also I think it's very interesting because we've been saying return to a classical education, and the TEA and those in favor of this that are trying to continue to sell 1605 to the public, they're saying, oh, it's a classical education because we added the Bible. Well, no, it isn't. And that's not what makes a classical education. But the other part of that is that if we're going to teach religion in our schools, then it should be a standalone class.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you should have a qualified teacher teaching it and not reading a script, which is what 1605, it's about reading scripted lessons. So again, we have so much minutia around 1605. It's free, it's Christian, it's high quality. HQIM is one of the big push words for what it is that it's high quality instructional material. It's not. And then one of the defenders who called you out on Twitter, Ginger, and said, have you read any of the OER? Well, hello, I have, and it's garbage. We don't
wait, and I want to talk about that, Mary, because you so we were given some of those instructional materials, and specifically with ELAR, English Language Arts. So you had mentioned this at the talk we did last week in Montgomery County with Ginger, that these textbooks cost about $35, $45, somewhere around there, whereas the printed open education resources materials are costing about $200, and that's from the horse's mouth, from Mike Morath. So why would we per binder, per manual that they're doing, and why would we shift, which the definition of OER on the Department of Education website is shifting resources away from textbooks to technology. That's or not the definition, but one of the reasons listed why they promote open education resources. The other one is equity. And they believe digital access gives equity, distributes equity amongst the students. It's a common buzzword. Well, so going back to the textbook, so why would we pay $200 to print all of these online resources that are supposedly free and open when we could just have a textbook that costs less, but doesn't put the kids online,
Say that again, Ginger.
It's vetted and static. I mean,
vetted by the state board, right?
Yeah, little listeners need to understand. The Texas used to have these massive textbook wars. We wanted our materials to be vetted, and I can't remember, and reviewed and going through a process and not changeable. Like CSCOPE, I would expose a lesson like the kids climbing the stairs to communism, or all is the Almighty God, different various lessons. This was edtech or lessons online. And I would leave and I would go to the store and I would come back and they had revised the lesson.
Because they were online and modifiable. And that's another way of implementing revisionist history is when you have online resources. And I talked to Steve Toth, Representative Toth, and this was the day of the vote, because the night before Mary and I had been in the Capitol and we were talking to him, and we had his word that he was going to vote no on it. And there were a number of, there were enough that were voting no on House Bill 1605 to actually kill the bill. And he said he was going to vote no against it, for it, or no on it. And the next day he changed his mind. And so we talked on the phone. I was very upset about it because I knew the implications and what this really meant. And he said, well, the reason I changed my mind was because it gave a parent portal for parents to finally be able to see. Finally, Lynn, they're going to be able to see the woke stuff that the kids are learning, or whatever the kids are learning. And they're finally going to have access and transparency. That's what tickled his ears to make him favor this UNESCO bill. Global education systems require compliance at all levels, in every state and every county, every inch of America. They have to get the buy-in, and these open education resources, that's the means by which they're going to implement this global education system. It's really simple. This isn't conjecture.
Right.
See it
so
eyes.
real quick, Lynn, I want to talk about some stuff that's in the bill, and then I want Ginger, because this is not Ginger's first rodeo, and Ginger immediately took some brilliant action that we want to talk about. But when you talk about how this is going to be implemented at every level, well, first of all, we're affecting the teacher allotment, and so one, in a state where we're saying we have to have competition in the education system in order to raise
Pardon me. Sorry.
bless you.
Bless
So in
you.
the state of
Allergic
Texas,
to globalism. Sorry.
yes, the Republicans are saying we have to have competition. This has to be a part of the free market. And this bill, House Bill 1605, literally sets up a monopoly for the state of Texas to produce their own curriculum. And it removes instructional material from the open marketplace. And how does it do that? Because the schools are given money, which is what you said. Lynn would always say, dangle the carrot. And then now we see that they're coming to them via grants through the schools. And also teachers are being paid a stipend if they will teach this instructional material that they're writing. And then the third thing here is I'm very confused how this bill, which the legislator said they put safeguards in there so that the State Board of Education would have control again of the instructional material, not the TEKS, but the instructional material.
Mm-hmm.
And yet this new instructional material is already shipping into school districts and nothing has been approved by SBOE. So there's a contradiction of truth, what the legislature thinks it's doing and what SBOE and what PEA is actually doing. And we warned them of this. And I'm not a braggadocious person at all. I really, that's not my motive or my action at all. But I'm going to say that when we have told them about what's happening in education, our right ratio has been extremely high.
Mm-hmm. And they don't like it.
Right. Well, that's just because we take we don't have to make anything up. There's no conjecture. We just take their words and their documents and the evidence that they put out there. They don't hide their crazy. They brag about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're except with the exception of the sneaky no bid contract that Marath slid in through the pandemic, during the pandemic, under pandemic powers in 2020, when he did the first Amplify deal for $50 million. So, that part was kind of hidden. But
in a healthy government, someone would be holding Mike Marath accountable for all of the no bid contracts, all of the data that he has sold. The fact that the Wi-Fi, the internet access that our children have is not secure. And we're putting everything on the internet. I mean, somebody would be holding him accountable, but our legislators are silent. They will not stand up. And again, we're going to all of them and saying, who's going to stand up? Who is going to have the courage? You know, where is David? Where is David?
Well, and so here's to that note, what we were saying in our presentation with Ginger on Thursday night is that unfortunately it's just the Democrats who have been questioning this and using terms like accountability and asking questions about the curriculum. So then Steve's logic is, oh, well, if the Democrats are for it, it must be, or if the Democrats are against it, it must be good. He also said that no Democrats voted for it, but that's actually not true. So there were 42 that voted for it. And so it was not a unanimous no vote from the Democrats. And the way that the bills work in the legislature is, and we can talk about this with Senate Bill 123, Mary, in just a minute, but the way that the bills work is if you want your bill passed, you have to negotiate and pass somebody else's deal over there. So there's this constant negotiating going on. Mm-hmm. Okay, you vote for mine, I'll vote for yours. So you will compromise your moral compass and your integrity to vote for somebody else's bad bill in order to get yours across the finish line so you can have your marquee bill and get all the kudos and the recognition when you go back home to your constituents. And they host them at these Republican meetings and they say, oh, you know, we've got Senator so-and-so and
tea parties.
Right. They go back to the Tea Party and they say, oh, look, I'm a staunch conservative. Here's my bill that I got in this bill. And we passed this and property tax relief. And it's all baloney because we know we've never seen any real property tax relief. So
well,
they're all just.
I often wonder, Ginger and Lynn, if the reason there's no consequence in these bills is because if they put a consequence in it, then they wouldn't be able to get it through. And they're trying to quiet their.
She went quiet when she was talking about.
I lost her.
Mary, you're frozen. Sorry. There, you're back. It went quiet.
Well,
and then,
I call them cheerleading bills. You
Yeah.
know, like
Okay.
Steve Toth, he's gone to the Conroe ISD and they're fighting him because he's passed this CRT bill. And he carried my CSCOPE bill. That was his first session.
He carried our No Tech for Littles bill. So did Tam Parker.
But-
And then he
and
goes
then
and votes for this bill. So we're like, well, you
There's
can't
no-
carry a bill for less tech for littles and then go vote for more tech for all. I mean,
There's no
you see?
recourse. There's no accountability. What's the word we just mentioned?
there's no consequence.
There's no consequences.
Yeah.
And I
They're
asked,
empty platitudes. Most of these bills are empty platitudes.
they're platitudes.
So we're
cheerleading
pointing
bills.
out the hypocrisy, and for that we get called Democrats, and we're not Democrats. So it's a false dilemma fallacy that if you call out a Republican, you must be a Democrat. You know?
So-
Yeah.
So I was so excited. It's always great when Ginger joins us. Last session, Ginger, even though she was busy taking care of her parents, she showed up in Austin on several occasions. And as I said, it's so lovely when you do show up.
Thank you.
And we appreciate it so much. But you did this event, and boy, I gotta tell you, my hat was so off. I was so excited when I got that phone call from you, and you said, Mary, can you get me a resolution? And I mean, we had just gotten home, and I was just recovering from getting home from being down in the Woodlands and staying up too late and leaving too early and all that good stuff. And by the way, what a great group of patriots. What a great
Thank
group.
you.
What a wonderful conversation we were able to have with people who, you know, were not in the education lane, but came because this matters. And so you call and you said, can you write a resolution? And, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, how did I miss that? And so tell us what happened.
Well,
Why did you know to do that? Because you had already done it.
well, I had been down the resolution lane before. I'm the one who I carried the International Baccalaureate resolution locally at I guess that's been about 3 years ago, or I can't recall the timeline. And because my local school district, the only school district in the county, Montgomery County, has the UN International Baccalaureate program. So I fought it before they ever implemented it, and I've been fighting it, exposing it since. And boy, is that a battle of its own, you know, because parents innocently put their kids in it. And then when you expose it for what it is, they're angry and they're mad at the messenger, not the message. And so that's been a battle. But so I decided I would pass a resolution in Montgomery County against open education resources.
Can you
And,
see this?
Go ahead.
Can you see this on the screen?
Yeah,
Not
it's really small, but
small
yeah.
for me, and I put my granny glasses on, very small. But
Yeah.
anyway, I decided to see if I could get it passed through my executive county. I'm thinking, why are conservatives supporting a UNESCO agenda in our public schools? So anyway, the resolution did pass. There was absolutely 4 in opposition of it. And a lot of that comes down to the IB program. They're upset that I've exposed the IB program, and it mentions IB in it. And I don't understand why conservative precinct chairs would support the UN. So that's another story in and of itself. But the resolution did pass, and my hopes were that we can get it passed in various counties across the state to let our elected officials know we don't approve of the UNESCO agenda in our public schools in Texas, and advance the resolution hopefully to the SREC in time.
Okay, can you see that better?
Yes, I can.
So Ginger, thank you for the hard work. I know it was difficult to even get to the meeting that night, but I really
Very.
appreciate your doing that. And I know that there are other precinct chairs that are going to be reaching out to you as we have shared this across the state, and we will be strategically as they say, whipping up the votes for this. And we're going to take note of who it is that's saying it's okay to have UNESCO and the United Nations embedded into our instructional material. And those who do, they're the ones that need to be labeled as not patriotic and not conservative, not us, because we're the true conservatives. The only reason people have taken umbrage with the work we do is because we've called out the truth on a voucher program. And again, we believe in school choice and we believe in parent empowerment, but we want the real stuff, not this fake stuff. So that's why they've really labeled us. Ginger, you're one of those who's called out truth there. And what I foresee, though, is that the battle is going to be, I think we will be successful at getting SREC to get behind this. What I feel the problem is going to be is the lies, the manipulation. Like we've already seen, it's not technology. Well, it is technology, but they're doing the smoke and mirrors right now by the state printing off and binding the online program.
Mary, you need to tell what the acronym stands for. SREC.
Oh, I'm sorry. State Republican Executive Committee. You know, I forget when I use the acronyms.
Yeah,
So
a lot of people are conservative and they vote Republican, but they're not involved in the local party, so they don't really understand some of these things, like what you would do with a resolution. And one thing I want to mention is when I put it forth in Dallas County, I'm not going to have the IB stuff in there, so we don't have to have that in there. Ginger's did, which I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just going to keep mine limited just to OER because the IB ship has already sailed. Mike Morath, actually our Commissioner of Education, was an international baccalaureate graduate himself from Garland ISD. So he's been indoctrinated back, he's younger, he's about 10 years younger than I am. So he was indoctrinated.
Yes, the actual resolution, the one that we're going to put forth, we had some legal eyes on the original that we hurriedly got out from Montgomery County. So we had legal eyes on it and it has been refined. But, one of the areas we say that it eliminates local control. I mean, and I mentioned this in the presentation, on the very first page of House Bill 1605, it says that the Board of Trustees of each school district shall limit redundant requests for information in the number and length of written reports that a classroom teacher is required. That's the state telling the local district what their contract can look like with the teacher. And what that really says in layman's terms is you may not ask a teacher to write a lesson plan. When you go on to read from there, the bill that does not give the school districts permission to have the teachers write a lesson plan. And then when you go on further in the bill, it says that your liability, a teacher's liability for the outcome of the education or the result is waived if they implement this 1605, this instructional material with fidelity. Who defines fidelity? I mean, this bill is so egregious that any, I don't care how much I like them or don't like them, anyone who voted for this really should be challenged. If we were going to have a single issue election cycle, it should not have been over a school choice bill.
Right.
It should have been over the advancement of the UNESCO, the violation of local control, the diminishing of the teaching profession, irresponsible fiscal choices.
Right.
I mean,
That's a lot of money.
Irresponsible.
They're all spenders, and they like to claim that they're conservative, but when they're voting for these bills with massive fiscal notes attached to them, they are spenders.
And just to remind the viewers, that's 2.44 billion.
Yeah.
Right. And that $1 billion, that is to dangle the money carrot to the districts because they cannot force a statewide curriculum. That is not their authority. And they know that. So they've written the bill so that they can dangle the money carrot and they can back these districts into a corner, especially the ones where they're struggling financially or they're struggling academically. So the commissioner will threaten them. And so if they don't adopt this, then they're going to be targeted for takeover like they're doing with Houston ISD. And so there is an agenda. This is a means to force these districts to.
Right. Another thing I wanted the viewers to understand is myself, Lynn, you and Mary, and other activists, education activists, have all met with numerous elected officials. Representative Toth, he knows us all. Crichton knows us all. We've all met with all of these people. And to this day, unless y'all could correct me, I do not know of one elected Republican official who actually will take on the fight for education of our Texas, the children in our public schools, and do the right thing. I don't know of one.
No, the only way that they have engaged is school choice and technology.
You know,
Or they're doing, I mean, they'll engage on the book battle, but what we're telling them is the book battle, that's a moot point because they don't want books or librarians, they want technology. So that's another marquee bill
Money.
that took a lot of energy and attention, but really it ignored the fact that the technology is an issue. And I want to point out too that they're working on making it so people focus on the cell phones and taking the cell phones out of the hands of the children, with no mention of the screen time on devices, school issued one-to-one devices, which are paid for by the taxpayers and through bond debt. They don't mention that. They're just talking about the phones and the which are issued by the parents. No mention of the government issued devices. We would sound the alarms on all of them, because any screen time and the addiction to technology comes in different forms. And if they're spending 8 hours a day in school, much of that is spent on their one-to-one technology devices like laptops and Chromebooks. Okay, Mary, you want to go through 1, 2, 3, or do you want to?
Let's save SB 1, 2, 3 for another time. Just that's how things happen. But Ginger, how were your children educated?
Well, they went to public school for a little while. I have to say, at that time, my oldest daughter did get a really good education at the local public school. I was very privileged to have, and it was in Magnolia, to pick and choose her teachers at that time because I was friends with the principal. So through the 5th grade, when we entered junior high, we found a Christian private school. That was a disaster. And after that, I homeschooled them the rest of their education. She's an A&M graduate, and another one's an RN, but they're home with kids, but I ended up homeschooling them.
So can I ask, just out of curiosity, what was the problem with the private school? What was
from my husband's perspective, other than it being very expensive, they never set a budget. I just didn't, it wasn't so much the curriculum. I just had a lot of battles, you know, and that's been so many years ago. It was just a year. I had them in a local Christian school that a lot of people around here used. It was just a battle for me, and I just felt impressed to bring them home for the rest of their education career. And
well, good for you.
Really good. And I have 10 grandkids being homeschooled now.
Oh, I love it. You know, it's really interesting. We are seeing a second generation of families being homeschooled now. And I will say it is the homeschool community is a wonderful community. And the children that I have met do seem to be way more grounded and really happier people. And I think so much.
My mom, who y'all know is a science author, has written 50 books, and she taught school in the Texas public schools for 20 years prior to writing. And she'll tell you, public school is not the place to put your kids now.
No, it's not. We encourage everybody to get out. And I mean, if you want your child to be an addict, then send them to public school, because if they don't get exposed to something in the middle school that's a chemical addiction, they're going to be addicted to the screen time and the dopamine that hits the brain from kindergarten, from the immediate access to things and immediate feedback. We know that it causes ADD and depression and anxiety. It causes sleep disruption. My husband always says to me, "Put that phone down. You're not going to be able to sleep tonight. It's too late at night for you to be on that phone." And you know, he's right. Yeah. And stress, myopia. I mean, the medical research shows the negative effects of technology on students as well as on the educators, the teachers themselves. It's very deep. And for our state to have just spent $2.44 billion on a boondoggle, with now that they're floating out so much deception to justify this bad bill, we must call on everyone to hold all of them accountable, and we need as many people to show up August 12th in Austin to testify. Now, again, we can show up with 200, 300. I mean, even sometimes we can garner 600 people to show up for an event. However, the chair, Brad Buckley, who authored this bill, and I call him Bad Bill Buckley because we've never seen so many bad bills out of education until he became the chairman. And he has, boy, we went after Harold Dutton because he put the parents last and caused a whole lot of chaos. And his chief of staff said, "I'll never do that again." Well, so he's not chairman anymore. We have Brad Buckley, and he's doing it again. The parents and the stakeholders will be the last to testify, and he is cutting off testimony at 6 p.m. You need to understand, yes, we need to understand that the Texas government is tyrannical. They do not care. We are being governed from the top down. If we were being governed from the bottom up and we, the people, were running this country, which is the way it was set up to be, we would be the first to testify. And those elected officials, they wouldn't get to go home at 6 o'clock. Too bad, so sad. You ran for this. And in this case, he created the mess of 1605. You're going to stay and listen to the truth about it. But no, he's going to cut it off at 6 p.m. We need to contact Dave Phelan's office in a loud message and say, do not appoint this man chairman or whomever. I mean, Oliver, son, you go ahead and contact them all. It is not okay. This man was a horrible, horrible leader for education. And this last move, I hope, is his last move, where he limits public testimony from stakeholders, because that's
what action items show up August 12th at the legislature at 9 o'clock. And a lot of people go back to school, including teachers and parents. So it's a terrible time, but we're asking people, get a sub, do whatever you can. This is very important for the future of these school districts. And we have to stop and repeal 1605. Second is resolutions. If you want to learn how to write a resolution for your county for the Republican Party, then contact us. You can go to familiesengaged.org for more information. And if you want it's Families Engaged under the subheading The Problem. That's where you can find the resources and the slide deck from our presentation on Thursday with Ginger's group in Montgomery County, where they just passed this resolution against open education resources defined by UNESCO. Anything else, ladies?
Well, question, Ginger, what can we do to continue to help you in Montgomery County and the Woodlands? Because there's part of Harris County that we that butts up against Montgomery County, and there's a very good group there. So what can we do to help you? And what kind of feedback are you getting? And do you need any resources to continue to put out truth on this particular matter? UNESCO must be exposed for what it is.
Yes. Well, I've been involved for a long time, and I know where to get the resources from y'all and stuff. So I'm doing pretty good in that area. We hopefully Pat Huff or somebody in Harris County can get the resolution through Harris County. That would be awesome. We've got some great activists in Harris County, Marianne Jackson and Pat Huff, Monica Dean, and many others. So I just want to try to make contact across the state with various people and try to get the resolution passed. I want the elected officials to know that we don't approve of this.
Amen.
All right. Well, thanks, ladies. We'll see y'all soon.
God bless.
God bless.
God bless.
Bye-bye.